And I would also like to take this time just to apologize for the delay. Due to weather conditions, it took some of the staff a little longer in traveling, so just be patient with us. Thank you. Okay. Good evening to all, and welcome to NYCHA's annual PHA Queens Town Hall meeting. My name is Carolyn Jasper, Director for Queens Staten Island Property Management Department, and I'm glad to be here with you. At this time, I would like to introduce Cornell Risby, Director for Queens Community Operations, who will acknowledge our resident leaders who are present here this evening.
Thank you, Carolyn. So as she stated, my name is Cornell Risby, and I'm the Director for Queens Staten Island Community Operations. And I would like to recognize first our resident leaders in attendance, Ms. Addie Williams from International Tower, if you could please stand. Thank you for coming out this evening. So before we begin the meeting, I would also like to introduce and make you aware that we also have interpreters available. We have them available in 3 languages, Chinese, Russian, and Spanish. We also have the assisted devices as well, and we also have sign language available as well throughout the presentation. So now I would like to allow the interpreters to introduce themselves so that they could please come up to the podium.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Estefanía, voy a ser la intérprete, una de las intérpretes de español esta noche. Si alguien necesita escuchar la presentación en español, por favor acérquese a la mesa que está atrás. Tenemos equipo mediante el cual pueden escuchar toda la presentación en simultáneo. Muchísimas gracias.
各位晚上好，我们今天晚上会提供中文翻译服务。如果有需要的话，可以到后面的桌子领取这个耳机，收听翻译。谢谢。
Добрый вечер. Если вам нужен перевод этой презентации на русский язык, обратитесь, пожалуйста, к столу переводчиков, получите синхронное оборудование в конце зала.
And there will be 2 of us this evening. If there anyone here who is deaf or hard of hearing, we'll be standing right over here on our left. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anna Shannon, and I'm a sign language interpreter. If anybody here that's deaf or hard of hearing, I'll be here along with Raquel.
Right, thank you. At this time, I would like all NYCHA staff to raise your hands so that way you can be recognized and the residents can see who you are. Thank you. And if there's any New York City Housing Authority police personnel here, please raise your hand so that we can acknowledge you. Thank you. So at this time, I would like to introduce to you Anne Marie, who will be the moderator for the meeting this evening. Anne Marie.
Good evening. My name is Anne Marie Flatley, and I'm the VP for Research and Management Analysis at the New York City Housing Authority. I'm here to review the meeting guidelines. We hope that as many people as possible will have an opportunity to express their comments. So before we begin, let's go over the following ground rules. The passing out of materials, photo taking, and video recordings are not allowed. However, a general information station is available outside where leaflets and flyers may be displayed. If you have a particular personal issue pertaining to your apartment, we have property staff available right outside to address your concerns. Resource tables have been set up outside in the lobby with information so that at the end of the meeting you can pick up information on things that may be of interest to you, including family services, gardening and greening, resident engagement, and the Department of Equal Opportunity. So, next slide. In accordance with Section 5A of the United States Housing Act of 1937 as amended, the housing authorities are required to develop, with review and input from residents and the general public, an annual plan that outlines its priorities for the upcoming year. As mandated, NYCHA has developed a draft significant amendment to the annual PHA plan for fiscal year 2015. In order to facilitate comments, the authority will hold 5 town hall meetings during the month of March. Flyers were posted in every building, senior and community center, and management office. The flyers were also translated into Spanish, Chinese, and Russian. This is the first meeting for the significant amendment, And I just want to be clear that this meeting is specifically covering the significant amendment. In June, we will have more town hall meetings that will actually cover the fiscal year 2016 annual plan for next year. So tonight is the first meeting. The next meetings will be held in March 9th in Brooklyn at St. Francis College, March 16th in Manhattan at the Johnson Community Center, March 23rd in Staten Island, and March 26th in the Bronx up at the Betances Houses Community Center. We will also hold a public hearing on April 14th at the New York Institute of Technology. As we stated before, the significant amendment was made available on February 23rd for public inspection at NYCHA's principal office located at 250 Broadway, on NYCHA's website, at each public housing development management office, and at all community operations, management, and leased housing borough office, as well as 9 designated community centers. In addition, NYCHA encourages residents, advocates, and the public to provide written comments on the significant amendment to the annual plan for fiscal year 2015. The comments will be accepted via fax, through the mail, and collected at each of the town halls. And there also is a website available to submit comments. Next slide. In an attempt to accurately reflect NYCHA's most critical priorities and needs, the significant amendment is an evolving document. The purpose of this town hall meeting today is to provide a venue where residents and the public are invited to comment on the significant amendment. NYCHA staff will make brief presentations on the topic listed on the screen. There then will be an open mic for questions and comments. Please complete a speaker's slip if you would like to make a comment on the plan or have any questions. So the 2 topics we'll be covering tonight are changes to NYCHA's flat rent policy and the fiscal year 2015 Capital Fund Annual Statement and 5-year action plan. So I'd like to move on to NYCHA's flat rent policy. And for those of you that are here, we do have copies of this presentation in English, Spanish, Chinese, and Russian. We also have copies of the flat rent schedule available in English as well as the languages, and copies of the significant amendment for you to review and take with you. So, changes to NYCHA's flat rent policy and rent schedule. As we stated before, we released the significant amendment on February 23rd. The purpose of this amendment was for NYCHA to revise its flat rent policies to comply with the legal requirements of the fiscal year 2014 Appropriations Act, as well as guidance that was provided by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development in the Public and Indian Housing Notice of 2014-12. The amendment to the 2015 annual plan includes a proposal to increase flat rents for NYCHA's households starting with the June 2015 annual reviews. HUD is requiring NYCHA to increase its flat rents over the next 3 years to reach 80% of fair market rent for the flat rents by May 2017 as mandated by law. Most households within the Housing Authority will not be impacted. About 80% or over 140,000 families will not see a change in their rent. The families that will be affected, about 35,000 who pay less than 30% of their income for rent. These households comprise about 20% of the families within NYCHA, and they currently pay only 23% of their income for rent. The average income of these families is more than double NYCHA's average income. Their average income is about over $53,000 versus $23,000 for NYCHA as a whole. And their current average monthly rent is $927 versus about $436 for the average NYCHA family. Excuse me. So on the next page, what you see is the chart in front of you is the flat rent schedule that we handed out. So the rents that are here are what are the actual 2015 flat rent schedule. It's on page 11 of the handout. And these are the rents that went into effect in December 2014. So for those of you that are first quarter annual reviews for NYCHA, you would have received your paperwork in December. At this point, since it's March, you should have filled it out. The Housing Authority staff at your development is working on it. We'll review the income, come up with a rent calculation, and you should receive a rent change notice. Now, as I said, most families will not be impacted. For those families that will have a rent increase, the rent actually won't go into effect until May. So the average rent that's projected, or average rent increase at this point, is around $65. So these were the rent increases that went into effect, as I said, first quarter of this year. What we're working on now is to change those rents mid-year. And the reason why we have to do that is, as we stated before, it was a change to the law and the regulation. Last year, when we went through this process, NYCHA had submitted a request to HUD for a 5-year phase-in of these rent increases. We worked with Congress, the mayor's office worked with the secretary of HUD's office. They could not agree to the 5-year phase-in. What HUD did allow us to do is to start this phase-in starting in June of this year. Most housing authorities across the country actually started this increase last year in June, so NYCHA has received an extra year to do these rent increases. So on the next page, on page 12, are the proposed rents, which are also on the handout. These rents will go into effect starting with June 2015, and, well, actually, I should say they'll go into effect with the annual reviews. The rents won't actually change until November. And this particular change will impact about 19,000 families, and their rent increase will range from about we have copies of the materials that you've picked up. So we have the flat rent schedule in the multiple languages, and we also have an interactive flat rent calculator online. So you can go, it works through the internet, so you can actually get it on your phone or on your computer or laptop or iPad or tablet. And you can go onto that website and plug in the number of family members, number of bedrooms in your apartment, and your total household income, and it will actually project what your rent could be next year as well as the following year. What I'd like to do is, did Nick make it in from Capitol, any chance, or is he still stuck on the LIE? Looks like he's still stuck on the LIE. Okay, so then you're stuck with me presenting this. So if you can go to the 2015 capital plan, and I'm actually on slide 15 of the presentation. So at this point, NYCHA is required by HUD to conduct a public hearing on its fiscal year 2015 capital fund, what's called the annual statement and performance and evaluation report, and the 5-year capital plan. These reports are actually included in the significant amendment document that you have available for you. Now, what this particular document does, it's every year, NYCHA submits to HUD a request for capital funds. This particular document is the official form that all housing authorities have to fill out. And the form lists by development for this particular year which developments have work planned and the type of work as well as the amount of work. So whether it's brickwork, roofs, any type of requirements contract will be listed on that document. Now, the reason why we're including this in the significant amendment for the public hearing is because we were only notified by HUD about a month ago that they're requiring all housing authorities to hold a public hearing. Going forward, we'll most likely cover this in the regular annual plan meetings, and we'll most likely have to have another public hearing possibly in November to cover the 2016 plan. We're still trying to work out the timing. It's been difficult because HUD has not released the official guidance giving us directions. So if there's information that seems to be missing, please let us know, or if you have questions, we'll follow up. But again, we're still working with HUD and trying to work with the little guidance that we've received. So on page 16, what this chart shows is that the capital funding is well below the P&A. The P&A is the physical needs assessment. NYCHA actually had architects and engineers go through every building and identify the capital work that needs to be done within the next 5 years as well as out to 10 years. So looking in this particular graph, on the graph, the colors that are in the dark blue, if you could see on the screen. So we have about $1.7 billion in funding over the next 5 years. But the capital need is actually over $14 billion. So what the slide is showing is that the amount of money or the amount of funds that we're receiving from HUD are really not covering our capital needs, but we're trying to do the best with the money that we've got. So on page 17, what this slide shows is it's a summary of the total development needs by year. So within the first year, it shows that we have about 1.4 billion or about 1.5 billion identified in work, and most of it ranges between apartments and architectural work that needs to be done. So over, beyond the next 20 years, the grand total, probably around 30 billion. So the amount of work out there is huge. The infrastructure, our buildings are aging. Most of our buildings at this point are over 50 years old. So if we can go to the next page. So in terms of citywide capital planning, the Capital Projects Division engages in a dual-pronged tactic. The citywide allocation of capital funds across the entire real estate portfolio to uniformly bring buildings into a state of good repair, and a comprehensive capital investment with high resident density developments a comprehensive capital investment within high resident density developments to maximize the rehabilitation impact. Well, what does that mean in English? That means that we prioritize putting in funds where it's, the largest population will be impacted. Let's go to page 19. So this particular graph shows the amount of capital funds we receive by type. So you can see over 80%, or the big bulk of the pie, is actually from the federal government, about 1.4 billion. Another 17%, a little slice, around 17%, is capital funds from the city, and then a smaller amount from the state, and then another smaller amount from other sources. But the bulk of our funding comes from the federal government, which has been decreasing over the past 10 years. So if we can go to slide 20. What this slide identifies is the type of work that we've identified over the next 5 years. So the two largest slices of pie are the structural or exteriors. That's the bricks, the roofs, the facades, the front of the building. That's around 38%. Program administration to manage all that's around 28%. We have about 8% identified in heating and plumbing. Interior work is about 7%. Safety, security, information technology, as well as energy are also identified. So if we can go to the next. So we go to slide 22. This shows the capital funds spread out by borough, and you can see the bulk of it is actually in various projects. Those, again, cover requirements. A lot of it covers requirements contracts, and then and about 1% in Staten Island. And again, slide 23, this shows over the 5 years where we're expecting or where we need to spend the capital funds, with again the bulk of the work or the bulk of the capital going to the structural and exterior of the buildings. So if we can go to slide 24. So we hope that as many people as possible have the opportunity to express their comments. As shown on the slide, this is the address where you can either write in your comments or you can send us an email. If you wish to speak first, you must fill out a speaker slip, and Makiba has the speaker slips. Okay, so she's there. When you begin to speak, the green light will go on and the timer will count down. When the yellow light is lit, did we bring the light with us? Oh, okay, you got it, sorry. So a table has also been set up outside so that written comments may also be submitted. Numbered speaker slips are non-transferable, and if you're not present or do not wish to speak when your name is called, you will forfeit the opportunity to speak. The town hall is being recorded and transcribed by a stenographer, so please speak only from the microphones in the aisles and identify yourself as well as your development or affiliation. Remember, we are here to comment on NYCHA's significant amendment to the 2015 annual plan. Any personal comments on, criticisms of, or oral attacks on NYCHA personnel, resident representatives, and public attendees, or any demeaning, discriminatory, or ethnic slurs, or vulgar language will not be tolerated. I, as the moderator of this evening's meeting, reserve the right to immediately move to the next speaker online if any comments are deemed inappropriate. The moderator on the stage is in charge of the town hall, so please be considerate of your neighbors and obey the moderator's directions. We're here to consider issues that are of concern to everyone, not issues that concern only a single resident or individual. If you have an issue that concerns only you or your apartment, we have tables outside specifically for that purpose. You may fill out a resident response form at the table outside marked resident complaints. We have, as we stated before, we have general information available outside tables with leaflets and flyers that are displayed. We also have tables right in the back of this room with additional copies of the flat rent schedule, the amendment, as well as the executive summary. Resource tables have been set up for family services, the gardening and greening program, resident engagement, and the Department for Opportunity. So at this point, I would like to open up the meeting to any comments or questions. We have one? Great. Peter Koch or Peter Cook?
Well, my question really is not in reference to the plan that you spoke about tonight,
Okay.
but in reference to why is community operations not really overseeing defunct resident associations and getting them all on board to do what they're supposed to be doing?
Is there anybody here from Community Ops that could respond?
I'll just use this mic here. So thank you, Mr. Koch, for that question. So we are in the process in working with the resident engagement, the resident association tenant leader in order to move the election along. And my office is working diligently with them as well as some of the staff from resident engagement. So if you have any further questions, Mr. Koch, we can speak at my office. Okay? Great.
Great. Does anybody else have any additional comments? We'll leave the microphone open. Well, we have to run the meeting till I think it was 8 o'clock, right? So we'll be here if there's additional comments.